With the restriction list newly unlimiting starter deck 6 Gabumon, this was the first deck that I largely wanted to explore post-restriction. With the fact that this gives Purple some old toys to use, and even newer cards since its last use in EX5 pre-Bandai Cardfest games, how does GaruruStar fare now? The narrative of today's video is going to look at the thought process of how you can construct this deck, what combination cards have advantages, and their interactions before diving into the deck profile itself. As a brief disclaimer, this deck list is by no means perfect, and aims to give you, my viewers, a baseline to start tinkering with. Finally, as always, if you enjoy these types of videos, do consider liking this video, subscribing to the channel, and hitting that notification bell for more future content. Prior to the restriction list 7 months ago, Gabumon X and Garurumon X were unlimited at 4 copies. And while Gabumon at this time was restricted to 1, how does it change the dynamic of the level 3s? Starter deck Gabumon was arguably one of the better level 3s at the time, mainly because your other options of BT2 required you to be deleted in battle before you could proc your inheritable, and of course the starter deck 16 Gabumon for its start of main phase gaining a memory if your opponent had a Digimon in play, while having almost the same inheritable as the starter deck 6 variant. The only difference, this Digimon's inheritable was restricted to a hard once per turn when used. But in today's meta, what are things to be concerned about? On one hand, I do agree with Bandai's assessment that this Digimon may not be as powerful now due to the inclusion of Blast Digivolution. The difference here is that when your meta is relatively established, granted it's not at this time, you know when your opponent adds certain cards or sets up that level 4, 5, or even 6 Digimon. Inevitably, if we have Blast Digivolution on board, the answer ultimately comes down to not attacking. Now on the other hand, Bandai has provided a lot of tools for these decks to trigger effects without having to attack. Not to mention, there are a lot more option cards now that can deal with certain board states. While true, the restriction of Gabumon X has hampered the ability to search for cards and trash one if you added a card via its effect, there are a lot of options that ultimately draw one and trash one by simply Digivolving. Starter deck 16 Garurumon is definitely one of my top contenders to use for this, because this Digimon is purple and Garurumon in its name. Not only does it draw one and trash one on Digivolution, but it also has a security effect that allows you to play back your Gabumons, or Matt Ishii does, from hand or trash. Prior versions of the deck I've played also utilized Dobermon X from EX5 as another option because at the same time, Gabumon X could not only locate Garurumon Digimon, but Digimon with X antibody in their name as well. Because Dobermon X can also draw one and trash one, this was very good. In more recent times, you could also utilize the SOC DexDoruGorumon line as well with Dorugumon and DexDorugumon. And while I stared at it for the longest time, ultimately it started shifting to a whole new mess of a deck in just the early conception. Dropping Gabumon X also means that you could utilize Bakumon from BT15, because this Digimon has a when Digivolving and on deletion effect that lets you draw one and trash one card. In essence, this Digimon is a poor man's Eismon scatter mode, but it would require another deletion to get another draw 1 and trash 1 proc. But ultimately, after tinkering with this build, I came to the conclusion that the best course of action was BT15 Garurumon. This Digimon, while having Garurumon in its name, is also blue and has that special Digivolution condition to go from any Gabumon, whether it's blue or purple. While it does draw you cards and doesn't trash, at times your resources in hand may be withered away to almost nothing. But having a blue source enables you to use almost any option card you might want to use. The overall purpose of this deck is to draw and trash your deck as quickly as possible. Ultimately, you want to aggressively attack into your opponent's security with your weregarurumons before going into Beelstarmon for 1 or even 0 memory and playing the option card, Metal Storm. Metal Storm is one of the option cards to use with this particular variant because not only could you bounce a level 6 or lower Digimon, but you could also be unsuspending a Garurumon Digimon and attacking again. But because it is a blue option card, this is why running the BT15 Garurumons can be so helpful. Even in the raise, this could let you play those blue option cards without having to worry about keeping your tamer alive. And while you run your standard 7-cost purple option cards for any 3 Musketeer deck, the newest addition to the deck is 7th Lightning. While this option card is Leviamon X influenced, one element that I thoroughly enjoyed about testing this particular card was the fact that by trashing a card, any card for that matter, you could delete a level 4 and 6 Digimon. The caveat here is that you could be trashing another play cost 7 option card, thereby reducing the play cost of Beelstarmon on the follow-up play. Other than these mentioned changes, what does the deck look like, and why are the ratios the way they are? For the level 2s, there are a few ways to approach this. Demimeramon for the draw 1 and trash 1 when the Digimon is deleted. Starter Deck 16 Tsunomon for the draw 1 if your hand size is 7 or less, and again, note that this card is not once per turn either. Or, you could use older Tsunomons like BT17-EX7 to draw 1 when a card is trashed from your hand. In playtesting, Starter Deck 16 Tsunomon was my initial testing point at 4 copies, while Demimeramon was 1. In continued testing, I found myself sometimes with always 7 cards, but the on-deletion rarely happened. Dropping Tsunomons to 2 and running Demimeramons at higher ratios felt like the right choice. But what you choose to do is ultimately up to you. Gabumon-wise, we've covered these already, but briefly, both have draw 1, trash 1 effects. However, the difference here is the newer variant gains you a memory if your opponent has a Digimon in play, while the other isn't once per turn. Gabumon X is just mandatory, no questions asked. Your other considerations here could be floodgates like Gazumon to stop your opponent from gaining memory, or even floodgate killers like Hackmon from BT6 that can delete an opponent's level 3 Digimon when it's deleted. Sadly, that may be more difficult than anticipated. Which is where level 4 Digimon like Porcupamon can come into play, but the only downside to it, it's not searchable with EX5 Gabumon X, nor does it really do much else other than Floodgate. To that end, this is ultimately why I ended up cutting Floodgates from the deck and went with a pure Garurumon line. As mentioned before, the inclusion of BT15 Garurumon can be great for card draw, playing mats for free, or even just giving you the color source of blue. Garurumon X though is key to gain extra memory and give your stacks battle protection. But the best value in my mind is currently the security Garurumon for playing free bodies, extra tamers, or even deleting opponents' Digimon in battle if they have 5000 DP or less. And luckily, because Starter Deck 16 weregarurumon can evo off the blue or purple Garurumons, even better. This is the primary aggressor of the deck, and with weregarurumon X can potentially create more 7-cost options in the trash, along with unsuspending your Digimon. For level 6s, you can run a single copy of Metal Garurumon Ace because this is one of the few Digimon that can deal with Digimon before they blast Digivolve. Granted, it has to be the lowest level. But with weregarurumon and this Digimon, for the price of 2 cards in your hand, you could be deleting a level 4 or lower Digimon, and then the lowest level Digimon. But of course you'll run the mandatory 4 copies of Beelstarmon, because this is what the deck is about. Who doesn't want to play this card for potentially 0 memory, and then recycle an option from trash and play it without paying its cost? Yes, yes, and yes. When playtesting, Ruin Mode sometimes was evoed on top of Melga, which was awkward. While yes, I do recover security, the ultimate problem was that Ruin Mode attacking meant instant overflow. Which is why DeathXmon ultimately came back into the picture, and I'm enjoying it. Which means from here on out, it's the option cards you should run in Beelstarmon. The minimum requirements of these options are all going to be 7 cost. Gavalt Schwarmer is arguably one of the weakest 3 Musketeers option card, at least in regards to security effect, because it simply adds to hand. This option targets specifically playcost 7 or less Digimon, which for Ace Digimon can be huge. Happy Bullet Showering likewise is another 3 Musketeers option that deletes all the lowest DP Digimon, while the last card Flight Bullet deals with level 6 and lower Digimon. For the last of the purple options, Rivals Barrage targets predominantly the highest level Digimon, while 7th Lightning is an extender piece that can do board cleanup potentially on 2 bodies and further fuel the trash. Metal Storm again assists with aggro, while Cocytus Breath is your general bounce removal. But the last option card of course goes to Calling from Darkness, because who doesn't want to recycle Beelstarmon for more plays? One consideration was Howling Crusher at 1 copy to stop decks from utilizing value sources. Trashing Tamers for Fenrir-Lugamon decks, knocking out all the sources on Machinedramon and Chaosdramon, or even removing the partition Digimon before your opponent can partition. But the deck profile comes together neatly with the BT6 Mad Ishida for extra memory and card draw when you promote a Gabumon or Garurumon Digimon out of the raise. Likewise, I had considered BT15 Mad Ishida, but the problem here is that your deck isn't all Garurumons, and it just feels bad to bottom deck those options. And with Starter Deck 16 Mat, this card can potentially get you up to 4 memory when you draw 1 and trash 1 card. And remember, with all your Garurumons, this makes playing Mad Ishida that much easier. But what are the strengths and the weaknesses? Welcome to general deck building with these types of decks, where your RNG is already decided at the beginning of the game. Some games you might have 3 or 4 security bombs in security, and other times you may have just 1 and a bunch of Gabumons. Mulliganing into a level 3 is pretty much what you want to do turn 1, but if you have color sources to do what you need to do for the options, that's also considered a keep hand. There are newer cards that even allow you to on-play or end of opponent's turn draw one and trash one that could be used. The Gizmon engine is also a viable way to play the deck. But the newest cards that I haven't quite tested yet for Beelstarmon are the cards for Hippogryphonmon and Darkmon. And the reasoning for this is simple. While Purple has a great draw and trash engine, these Digimon offer something previously not available to Beelstarmon decks, and that's recovery. While true, you could utilize Shine Greymon Ruin Mode for this. The fact is, even Digivolving in a Darkmon on the battlefield can be a giant trap in which if Darkmon is attacked, you could blast Digivolve into Magna Angemon Ace to recover 1, DP reduce, and retaliate if need be. But largely this video's focus is on the original Garurumon Star engine with the release of Gabumon from its status of restriction. Which variant of Beelstarmon do you think you'll be playing, and is GaruruStar the way, or is another option looming on the horizon? Let me know your thoughts, because it's time to explore other post-restriction deck lists and more. This is DIGI-PANDA, logging out.